this fan base right now, if they weren't behind Rodgers when the hire came out 3 minutes after Matt Campbell left, they're certainly behind him now a week and a half later.
Yeah, he said he wants to beat those effing Hawks, right?
He sure did. That's one way to win over the fan base.
Welcome into another week, another great conversation here on Cousins Conversations. Joining me this week, we have the 2024 Iowa Sports Broadcaster of the Year, Jake Brend, and he also now works for Cyclone Fanatic. Jake, how are we doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Nick. I'm glad and honored to be your next guest.
Hey, it's the perfect time. I mean, right now, Iowa State athletics is popping off. There's a lot going on with the Cyclones. Most recently, you had the Cyhawk wins for both the men's and women's basketball teams. Both basketball teams as well, undefeated. And you had Matt Campbell leave, and then Jimmy Rogers get hired all in the same day. So how are we feeling after all this? I mean, are you good? Are you good? Are you taking a breath? How are we doing?
I actually slept 10 hours last night, and that was by far the most that I in 1 week I probably totaled maybe 5 hours a night. If I'm being generous, it was probably closer to 4 hours a night. So it felt really good to know that I didn't have a ton to do on this Monday, hopefully, and could just not set an alarm for the most part and sleep as long as I wanted. And I desperately needed it.
Hey, that's a great feeling for sure. Let's go back to that day though. It was that Friday. You hear Matt Campbell throughout the day, rumors he's going to Penn State. Then it happens. There's a team meeting, and then 10 minutes later, there's a new coach, Jimmy Rogers, coming over from Washington State. How do you look back at that day now?
It's still a blur. I sat in the Jacobson building, which is just the athletic administration building, pretty much from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. when we found out that the news was going to go down and we heard about a team meeting. And I ended up being there until about midnight working. So I spent an entire day in that building, and for the most part, it was spent just waiting, sitting around, seeing. Like, I was 98% sure that what was being reported was going to happen, but there's the 2% that's trying to put together pieces on why would it take 6 hours after ESPN's Pete Thamel reports it, or Ross Dellinger? Like, those are the two best guys in the business. So there's a lot of just reasoning to seeing what was going on. And it was a bizarre day looking back, especially when you consider right after the news becomes official, Iowa State's already got a head coach. And I'm processing that, geez, I'm not going to get to participate in a coaching search for media purposes, which I was not completely looking forward to, but I'm like, well, that's at least one of the perks of a coaching change, is you get to go do that. And that didn't happen. And it was bizarre how it went down. And it still doesn't feel real about a week and a half later.
Crazy. With that day, this is your first season like with Cyclone Fanatic covering Matt Campbell. Did you ever think this was going to be his last season and he'd have this opportunity to leave?
I think it's always a possibility. And you'd hear rumblings inside just about not the, I don't know what the proper term would be, just some NIL negotiations. And it's clear that there were disagreements, and there were two stances. Like, Jamie Pollard in the athletic department is going to look out for the overall health of the athletic department, and Matt Campbell is going to look out for the overall health of football. And I think there's no doubt that resources played a part in Campbell heading to Penn State. Did I think it was going to happen this year? I mean, when Penn State opened, I said on the record, I said to people, if Penn State offers, I bet he takes it. I just didn't know if he was going to get offered. I didn't think if he would. And it felt like once we hit December and there hadn't really been any rumblings of it. I kind of felt like Iowa State was in the clear, and then signing day happens. BYU strikes out with Sataki, and a phone call gets made, and that seems to be the end of it. So it's a 50-50 where I think you were kind of delusional if you sat there and thought Campbell's never leaving. But I also feel like he proved over his decade that he deserves a grain of salt because he has turned down bigger jobs and he'd proven he wanted to be here. So I'd kind of gotten in that mindset of, well, I think he's going to stay until he proves me otherwise, and proved me otherwise this offseason.
Yeah, like you said, he had offers everywhere. I mean, I think even like the NFL was interested in him, right? Like the Jets.
Oh, yeah.
The Jets wanted him. So, yeah, that's crazy. And especially after the extension, too, I think that's why people were a little taken back was he signed that extension. But, when you get the opportunity to go closer to home, like he was saying, then you can't really, fault him for that.
Yeah, and extensions, unfortunately, don't mean anything now. Contracts mean nothing. It's just Pollard put it best. Pollard said that the only thing a contract decides right now is how much do they get paid if they get fired. That's all. Like it. Of course, it's your yearly compensation, but the yearly compensation, I swear, changes on a year-to-year basis anyways. Because if you have a coach that other people want, like Matt Campbell for the last decade, almost every offseason he got an extension because School X comes calling, and rightfully so, Campbell uses that as a bargaining chip, gets his assistant coaches, gets his players a little more money, and you do it all over again next season. And that right there just shows how little contracts mean.
And Campbell taking a lot of his offensive staff are finding out here as the weeks go on. Taylor Mauser's going there, the offensive coordinator. What do you see offensively from Iowa State? Do you foresee a lot of these offensive players from this last year going into the portal and maybe going to Penn State?
I still don't know what to expect. I would expect a handful of guys to certainly be at Penn State. So many of these players commit to coaches. They don't commit to the school for the most part. But at the same time, a lot of these guys have been in Ames for 3-4 years. They've got girlfriends. They've made friends in Ames. They've got guaranteed playing time next year for the most part. They might be getting paid more at Iowa State than Penn State just because of yes, Penn State's NIL roster is $30 million and Iowa State's is 13, but Iowa State might value a player they already have more than a Penn State would be valuing them. So those are all the factors in play for Iowa State to keep a handful of guys. But there's also the offensive coordinator, Tyler Roll, coming back from the Detroit Lions, was on that staff in 2024 and has familiarity with a lot of those guys. So that's also a benefit. But at the same time, if Campbell wants someone to follow him, they're certainly going to have the opportunity to do so. I still don't know exactly what that number is, but I'd expect 3 or 4 offensive starters from Iowa State to be at Penn State next year.
What do you think happens with Rocco Becht? He gets that surgery to make it look like he's going to play this next season. He has that 1 year of eligibility left. What do you see there? I mean, he's at the Cy-Hawk game, supporting players and everything, looking like he might be staying there. But what do you think? What do you think he does?
I've heard it's 50-50, and that changes by the day. That could change by the hour. My gut would say that he stays. I think bringing back Roll, if you bring in an offensive coordinator that has no tie to Iowa State, is a total fresh start, at that point I'd say he'll 100% leave. But if you look at potentially following Campbell to Penn State, they've got Grunkmeyer, who a pretty high prospect in itself. He's got 3 years left. A lot of Penn State fans are going to want Grunkmeyer to play, and they're maybe even going to want a bigger name from the portal. So while it's certainly an option for Rocco to go to Penn State, I don't know if he's the guaranteed starter necessarily. I think he would end up starting. I still think he's proven so much more than Grunkmeyer has, and a lot of Rocco's struggles this season can directly be tied to when he tore his labrum early in October and played through it. So I think Rocco at this point is probably underrated. And if I was Iowa State, I would try a lot. I'd try to throw a lot at him to keep him, because if you keep Rocco, you probably keep another handful of guys that want to stay just to play with their guy, just to play with their leader.
I can definitely see that happening. It's like you said, Tyler Roll's coming back. Former NDSU Bison as well. I did cover him in my days up in Fargo for my first job, so it's cool to see that he's back with Iowa State. Jimmy Rogers, the new head coach. What really stood out to me with him, listening to his introductory press conference, was just the humility of the guy. He, worked his way up from the coaching staff on South Dakota State, and then he has the relationship with athletic director Jamie Pollard, where, he says, "What do I have to do to get this job?" And Pollard says, "Go up one level." And then he goes up to one level, and then he gets, the job when the opportunity arises. Well, what were your first impressions of Rogers?
Yeah, he's intense, genuine. You can just tell he's serious. Like he's grateful for the opportunity. It's kind of a mix of all things. I like how he's not too robotic. Kind of says whatever he's thinking, which I appreciate, and we'll see if that continues. A lot of coaches maybe start like that, and the further and further they get down the road, then they hold things closer to their vest. But I like him. The proof comes 2-3 years down the road after you've seen the results on the field. But I think so far he's hit all the right notes with the fan base. He's hit all the right notes with the media. And as we speak, he's on the trail right now, whether it's recruiting his own guys to stay or trying to find some other players to come in Ames for the 2026 season.
Yeah, that was another thing he said. He wanted to get to know all the players before any decisions were made, and also that he knew some of the players on the team as well. Cooper Ebel is one of them. He said he recruited him back in the day in that same recruiting area, so you see that as a benefit. What is it with the excitement of these Cyclones fans? I mean, you see the video of Rogers coming in like the middle of a snowstorm, and there's fans waiting there for him right at the facility.
Yeah, it proves to me Iowa State fans they live by their saying, loyal, forever true. And there's a lot of fans that were hurting a lot when Matt Campbell left. And why not? Like he was there for the best era. He was responsible for the best era in Iowa State football history. And it sucked for a lot of fans. It sucked for every fan to see him go, but there was a handful of fans. I know a couple of them. Steve Kemp just said, "You know what? Let's welcome Coach Rogers to Ames and let's show him that he's got our full support." And I think he saw that, of course, at the airport on Saturday night when he flew in, and he saw it at the Cyhawk game on Thursday night when he was introduced to a sold-out crowd. This fan base right now, if they weren't behind Rogers when the hire came out 3 minutes after Matt Campbell left, they're certainly behind him now a week and a half later.
Yeah, he said he wants to beat those effing Hawks, right?
He sure did. That's one way to win over the fan base.
For sure. And speaking of the Cyhawk, I mean, both, like we were saying on the top of this, men's and women's teams both win. Great games for both men's and women's, and both undefeated. So what has it been about this start of the year for both of these teams that really just they're hitting on everything?
It's really good roster building, roster management by both parties. TJ Otzelberger took way too much flack this offseason, mostly from his own fan base, on how he constructed the roster. Oscar Clough was like favored to go to Iowa State, it seemed like. He was a 20-point-a-game guy at South Dakota State, one of the country's best rebounders. Natural tie between SDSU and Iowa State. He played for Otz's former assistant. And at the last second, Clough goes to Purdue. And Iowa State got priced out for the most part. And people lost their ever-loving minds. Absolutely lost their mind. And from what I had heard, the staff wasn't completely torn up about it. They obviously wanted him. They wouldn't have recruited him if they didn't want him. But they had a 1B option in Blake Buchanan. And Buchanan got a lot of hate from the fan base when he came in from Virginia. 5 points a game at Virginia, 5 rebounds. Are you kidding me? And Buchanan has proven so far at this point to be better than Clough and be a better fit. The guy's an absolute dog. A junkyard dog from minute 1 to minute 40. And I think when Otzelberger constructed this roster in the portal, keeping Taman Lipsy, keeping Milan Momcilovic, and keeping Joshua Jefferson didn't get any headlines. If you would have renamed Taman Lipsy with the exact same build, the exact same stats as Jimmy Williams coming from Utah State, you're like, oh my gosh, we got Jimmy Williams. But nobody's doing that with like, oh my gosh, we got Taman Lipsy. And I think it was good for Iowa State to be able to fly under the radar, because the way college basketball works now, you might as well just start fresh every year. Mm-hmm. So if you start fresh with Lipsy, Momcilovic, and Joshua Jefferson, those are 3 All-American caliber players, and I think you're seeing that play out right now, that Otz has completely built a great roster once again, and there's a reason they're undefeated and in the top 5.
Like you said, yeah, roster building. I think it's also just like the right fit too. I mean, when you look at Joshua Jefferson, what he did coming in, he wasn't really a name that was really on anybody's radar. And now, like you're saying, he's playing like an All-American out there, and Blake Buchanan fit in well with this offense as well. It's just really fit that I see. What is it about Otzelberger's system that he can really find these, diamond of the rough guys that really fit in with the system?
There's a few different aspects, and I've tried to pick his brain on this a lot because I think it's fascinating how he does it. There's one thing that'll get you on the court at Iowa State. You have to play 110%. There's no question about it. And he proved that last year when Keyshawn Gilbert got hurt and was out for the NCAA tournament, and Taman Lipsy was also hurt in the NCAA tournament, essentially playing on one leg. Iowa State had a 4-star guard sitting on their bench, Noyes Andrusaitis. From everything I've heard, that guy didn't play as hard as everybody else. That guy maybe didn't go the extra mile on the practice court. Do you know who did? Walk-on Cade Kelderman. Do you think Otzelberger in his right mind actually thought that Kelderman that day gave Iowa State a better shot to win than Andrusaitis? Probably not. But do you think Otzelberger going with Kelderman over Andrusaitis showed what you can do in that program if you truly commit to every single day, playing your butt off, working harder than anybody else? I truly think that rewarded the program for a decade down the road. Even if you lose to Ole Miss, who knows, maybe Noyes could have come in and scored 15 points. We don't know. We won't know those what ifs. But to me, that proved just how there's a lot of coaches nationally that'll say that. How many coaches are actually gonna live that out in action? And Otzelberger has proved that time and time and time again. And he's able to evaluate that in the portal. He hits a lot of guys in the portal. Curtis Jones averaged 9 points a game at Buffalo. That didn't look like an NBA player. Otzelberger and his staff saw something in Jones, and then there's the player development piece that they're so good at. That's a totally separate question, though. But they have names on that staff that are able to evaluate talent, bring them in, bring guys that are going to play with a chip on their shoulder, play tough, and do what they do. And I truly don't know if there's a coach in the country right now that's better at constructing a roster than TJ Otzelberger.
You saw exactly what you were saying in Sunday's game over Eastern Illinois. Otzelberger was like, "I'm not happy with how the team played. We only have so many opportunities to play in front of the home fans at Hilton," and he just wasn't impressed. And then I think Milan also echoed that same thing.
Yep.
So the team's aware of it, and they want to play better.
Yeah, and they are. It's almost a process now, like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The players know that if they don't play hard, they're not going to play, and they're not going to win. And they're aware of it. Like Taman Lipsy said to me before the season, like, not just anybody wants to play at Iowa State. Recruits know. Transfers know. This isn't surprising anyone anymore. I think early on in the Otz era, a couple guys might commit, and they don't know how they're going to play, or they don't know what it actually took. These guys all talk now. These guys talk in the AAU circles, and they talk to their old teammates and their old coaches. If you're committing to Iowa State, you know exactly what you're getting yourself into, and that's a good thing, because you're not going to have as many recruiting misses as maybe the past couple years, where you do bring in a 4-star, ultra-talented guy, and he's not willing to go play Otzelberger basketball for 40 minutes and doesn't really see the court too much longer. Now Iowa State's got an identity. They've got an identity on the recruiting trail in the transfer portal process, and you've got guys that want to go play for it, even if it's not the easiest style. The guys that are in the building want to be a part of it, and I think you're completely seeing that with the way guys buy in, like a Nate Heisey, who certainly proved last year at points that he could be a go-to scorer for the team. Right now he's averaging about 6 points a game, and he commits to playing razor tough defense for 35 minutes, maybe taking 3 shots a game and making good passes, crashing the offensive boards. And that's important. You need a guy like that. Heisey, if he really wanted to, could probably go to a lesser Big 12 school, like a West Virginia, Central Florida, Utah, and he probably could go be a 13, 14-point game scorer, but no, he's committed to his role at Iowa State, and they're going to be better for it.
The Big 12 is stacked this year. Lots of 4 stars. You know, Darren Peterson over at Kansas, my alma mater. Won't go into that with all his hamstring problems, but and then you have AJ DeBansa at BYU. They're supposed to be like number 1 and 2 picks in the NBA draft. And you look at Iowa State, who just has veteran team playing well, older. How do you see Iowa State doing in the Big 12 once we get to that play starting up here in a couple weeks?
Well, they're favored, which I did a podcast last night with Brent Bloom, Williams and Bloom on Sunday nights, and he asked me who I thought was favored, and my guess was Arizona. I thought Arizona would be a slight favorite above Iowa State, but nope, Iowa State's favored. And right now, Ken Palm has Iowa State going 14-4 in the Big 12, which would be remarkable. And I think it's fair for Iowa State fans to expect that. You look at the first month of that schedule, it's relatively easy especially compared to the second half of that schedule. But what I was cautioning Iowa State fans with, and what I'll continue to do, these aren't the old days. Like there were, this as good as anyone, Nick. There were a couple of years where KU went out and won the Big 12 at 13-5.
Mm-hmm.
Those days aren't really happening anymore. The bottom of this conference has fallen off a lot. The middle part of this conference has separated itself way away from the top of the conference. Houston went 19-1 last year and won the league. I believe they were 16-2 the year prior. So Iowa State, they're going to have to go 15-3, 14-4 to be in that range. And you know what that includes? I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't know if it can happen. You got to win a game at Allen Fieldhouse.
Yep.
That's what Houston's done. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I don't think Iowa State fans are completely ready for what it's going to take to win a Big 12 championship. Because in the past, you think of going to Baylor. You think play hard, make it a game. If you can win, awesome, what a win. If you lose, you move on to the next one. That's certainly still fine, but if you're trying to get a 1 or a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament and want to win the Big 12 championship, that is absolutely not the case. You got to go into Waco because you're going to be favored by 6 points and win it. So it's different right now for Iowa State, and I'm excited to cover it. Like it makes every game mean so much more because you're in the past you've kind of been in that if a couple swing games go here, you'll be a 3 seed. If a couple games don't go your way, you'll be a 4 or 5. But really, this game at Oklahoma State in February really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. It's not the case this year, man, and that's what you do it for. That's what's fun.
Exactly. Bill Self's only lost 12 games at Allen Fieldhouse. So what does that tell you about how hard it is to win there? That Houston game came down to the wire as well. So you're going to have to win a close game when it comes to playing in Allen Fieldhouse. On the women's side, you have Audi Crooks, the nation's leading scorer. Now, she didn't play in Sunday's game, but doesn't look like it might be too serious. Don't want to speculate anything, but you still have Addy Brown as well putting up the points that she does. So you have a great duo there to go forward with. How far can this Cyclones women's team go?
I think it's got a chance to be Bill Fenley's best team. And Fenley hasn't made an Elite Eight in over, I think, 20 years at this point. And I think when you've got two players playing at the caliber that Audi Crooks and Addy Brown are, they can go far in the tournament. We still haven't seen them against an elite college basketball team yet this year. And honestly, we're not going to see it until the NCAA tournament for the most part. Because I think Iowa State is the best team in the Big 12, up there with TCU and Baylor. But those teams aren't on the level of a UConn, a South Carolina, teams like that. And Iowa's certainly the best win Iowa State has so far. I think I was on that same tier as Iowa State. They're either a tier 2 or tier 3 college basketball program at this very moment. And I think Iowa State's going to be favored probably in all but 2 of their Big 12 games, which is again, that's a crazy spot to be. And they should be. They've proven to be the best team in the league so far. Nation's leading scorer, and she's out. Addy Brown steps up 28 points. If you turn the game on as someone who'd never watched this team or didn't know anything about them, you'd assume, oh yeah, Addy Brown's this team's best player. No doubt she's the number one option. Nope. She's good enough to be the one option. She's absolutely good enough, but she's also selfless enough to step down into that second role in that second option and be the best passer on the team, be the team's best rebounder, and also still find a way to score almost 20 points a game. Addy Brown's incredible, and I've been banging the drum that she's the most underrated player in America for weeks now, and I think it was really cool to see her get that moment on Sunday without Crooks on the floor.
Definitely proved that what you said on Sunday in their win over UNI. When Audi Crooks does come back, what is it about her? She just has this like infectious personality. She's very open. She was talking about the free throws at the end of the Iowa game, how she was thinking about her dad. I know she was thinking about Coach Fenley, they both lost their parents in the Cy-Hall game. What is it about Audi Crooks that she just has this infectious personality that you can't not like her?
Yeah, she's always smiling on the court. She's such a genuine person. She's someone that Iowans look up to, someone that just people all around the country look up to, and it's awesome because she's also backing it up with awesome play. She's the nation's leading scorer. She's fun to watch because she's just graceful. Like you'd think someone at her size would just be bulldozing people down on the block. No, the hardest part for Audie's game is just getting her the ball. Once she's got the ball, she's going to score. That's how it is. Because she's added the turnaround fade. She's added a few more moves to her bag, if you will. But at the end of the day, if she catches the ball on the block, she's probably going to score 8 times out of 10. It's unfair, and it's really fun to watch, and it's probably the best weapon to have right now in college basketball. I don't know if there's a player right now that can score as easily as Audie can.
You're watching that Iowa game. It's just like automatic. Like the passes down low to her, laying it in the paint. It's just fun to watch. How would you describe? I've been there a couple times, and obviously you mentioned Allen Fieldhouse. How would you describe the atmosphere at Hilton Coliseum?
It's loud because of the concrete. Like that's what makes it unique. There's a lot of places around the country that have passionate fans and have loud fans. Iowa State certainly has that. That is certainly part of what makes Hilton Magic real. It's what makes Hilton Coliseum loud. But scientifically, from an engineering perspective, the most unique thing about Hilton Coliseum is it's made out of concrete and it's got a flat ceiling. So all the sound just bounces back and forth, and it truly makes it so uniquely loud. In my opinion, every fan base is different. Like, I think Kansas and Iowa State fans are very similar in the fact that it's a high IQ basketball crowd. And there's been a lot of talk the last week as far as free throws go, and Iowa fans are upset that Iowa State fans were booing after every call. Do you genuinely think that every Iowa State fan in that building actually thought that every call was going against Iowa State?
No.
No. But do you think most Iowa State fans there know that if you boo every single call, eventually it's going to affect the refs? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think Kansas fans understand that too.
Oh, yeah. We get all the calls in Allen Fieldhouse, man.
Exactly. That. And I don't know if you saw this. I had a tweet that I had 100 Iowa fans respond to, and I didn't. I'll be honest. I read like 3 of the replies. I could tell where everything else was going. But all I said was I thought Otzelberger handled that game so well, because there was a stretch early in that second half where a couple calls after Iowa State built a 10-point lead, a couple calls went Iowa's way and allowed them to go on an 8-0 run. And all I said was Otzelberger kept his composure. None of the players said anything to the refs. They just let the crowd do the talking each time. And then at the end of the game, Iowa State got some home cooking. And Iowa State absolutely got some calls that went their way. And for some reason, Iowa fans thought that that was absurd. But to my point, it's Hilton Coliseum's at its best when the fans are desperate, when the team needs it. Like, there's been a lot of the KU game last year. Iowa State won by double digits. The pregame atmosphere was immaculate. And there were some extremely loud crowd pops on Curtis Jones' first half heater. But I don't remember that as one of the best Hilton atmospheres I've been a part of. The best Hilton atmospheres I've been a part of is when the team's down 18 and the crowd wills the team back into the game. And those are, kind of saw it at the Cyhawk game last Thursday, that the team desperately needed the crowd to get them back in the game. And I think that's what's so unique about that building. This
is a little bit of a full circle moment for you too, growing up as an Iowa State Cyclones fan to work for the Cyclone Fanatic now. When you look at this, point in your life, just, covering the team that you grew up watching and loving, and you almost go into the school as well. What do you think about there?
Yeah, it's awesome. I dreamed of doing it one day, and I didn't know if it would happen. And if it did happen, I didn't know how it would happen. Every journey is unique. But I knew my entire life that in some way, in some form, that I wanted to be a part of Iowa State in some way, or be covering Iowa State in some way. And I loved my time at Local 5. I'm extremely grateful, and I'll always be grateful that they're able to give a shot on a kid while he was in college and give myself some great opportunities. And I certainly got to cover my fair share of Iowa State related things there also, and was able to cover a lot of cool things at the University of Iowa as well. And of course, cover tons of great high school athletes. But I knew deep down the entire time, like I'd be at Kinnick Stadium covering a big time game between Iowa and Michigan or whoever it is, and I'd be listening to the Iowa State game on my AirPods. Like, my heart was always still where my fandom lays, and it always will be. And I like to think at Cyclone Fanatic that I can be a voice for the fan while also being a hybrid professional voice as well, and not being a homer, not being irrational either, because fans can be irrational. Like, you can the team can lose at Cincinnati in football, and a lot of the fan base is furious thinking things are over. And like, yeah, I was devastated, but you've also got to take that deep breath and remember, I gotta be a professional voice, and I gotta be someone who isn't completely connected to this and can be able to give perspective. And obviously still growing with that. I'm going to have to grow a lot before March Madness, because I can promise you there's no one outside of that locker room that is going to be as crushed or as excited by every single result that happens in March Madness than me. And I gotta work on that a little bit, just so I can keep that perspective, just like a journalist should.
Hey, only 3 months away for you there, March Madness. But yeah, like you said, you were at Local 5. That's where you started. You went there out of college, which was awesome. Not a whole lot of people get that opportunity. So what do you think it is just about getting into the industry? And a lot of it is about connections as well. So to have that connection, to get in your foot in the door, what did you immediately learn about just covering sports and being in a market like Des Moines?
Well, I learned in order to get there, you just need some luck. I know that's not the message everybody wants to hear,
Mhm.
but
It is, but it's true though. Yeah, you're not wrong.
it's
Yeah.
very true. You've got to work as hard as you can to get to that 80%, to put yourself in an opportunity to where good luck can fall your way. But then there is the 20% luck, and I got 50% luck. I got 100% luck. I'm blessed to be able to do that. As far as what I learned on the job, I just learned that there's not a lot of time to learn. Like the
Mhm.
entire thing is learning, and the
Mhm.
entire thing is evolving. And that's what I'm still learning right now. And unfortunately, that's what I think has held the TV industry back, and a large part of
Mhm.
why I didn't do it. If TV was like it was 30 years ago, as far as its share in the market, I'd probably still be doing it. But there's other avenues, there's other industries, there's other things that come up. And what I've learned is you got to go where the people are. And that's what you're doing right now with the podcast.
Yep.
Podcasts are a big thing. You got to go where the people go. And that's what I'm constantly evolving at Cyclone Fanatic.
Yep.
Like right now, YouTube is our biggest emphasis right now. And when I was at Local 5, I learned a lot of different ways on how to try and connect with people, because it's going to be hard to connect with people my age or people in the younger demographics when it's the 10 o'clock news on Local 5. How am I going to do other things to connect with that? And a lot of that's social media, and a lot of it is sharing your stories and sharing clips of your stories to get people to click on the link to watch it. And it's tough and it's always evolving, but I certainly learned a lot about that, while also just learning ways to tell people stories that they cared about. Because I'm a sports fanatic, you're a sports fanatic.
Mhm.
We understand it at a level that a lot of people don't. We understand it at a level that 95% of people don't. And it's hard to take yourself out of that and remember, oh, Grandma Betty up in Story City's watching this. She doesn't know what a first down is. So I've got to make this story be able to go beyond that
Mhm.
and have a heart tug to it, or have a human interest part to it, or have a novel piece to it to get Grandma Betty in Story City caring about it, and also diehard sports fanatics in Des Moines caring about it. And I only grew in that avenue while I was at Local 5, and it was probably the hardest part of growth that I had to do.
Digital space is crazy right now. Obviously, this podcast, like you mentioned, Cyclone Fanatics putting a lot on YouTube. This is on YouTube as well, and people building brands and doing those things. Um, Being in that digital space now, I mean, I see you're doing like reaction videos at halftime of football games, basketball games, instant reaction after games. What have you consumed, or what do you think is the most important factor of that space to really make it effective?
Yeah, it's an important balance because people want everything immediately. It's like when my boss Chris Williams started doing instant reaction podcasts at Cyclone Fanatic 10 years ago. By instant reaction, it was okay, he watched the game, went to the press conference, wrote his column, and then podcasted. And the audience, the people said, "No, that's not fast enough. We need it faster." So now Williams goes live right after the buzzer sounds. And we go live like when I'm not covering the game, I do it with, because I'm a journalist. I got to go to the press conference. I got to do all that stuff. But when the team's out in Vegas or when the team's on the road and I'm not at the game, I'm going live right after the game too. And that's where a lot of the emotion comes into play, and you've got to be really careful and put things through a filter because your perspective isn't there yet. The game just ended. If I was going live on a podcast after the Arizona game last year, when Caleb Love hit the full court shot, I might have been puking on air. Like, that's how I felt. And you got to have perspective when it comes to that. And that's where I think at CF we do a really good job of finding that balance, because Chris does his thing with the instant reaction show. I go to the post-game press conference, I post the highlights, I post the pressers, and I do my 5-minute post-game recaps, which is very little opinion. It's like I'm on the news again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I try and do. And that comes out 3 hours after a game, 3.5 hours after a game. And that's also just as important as the instant opinion, the instant reaction. And that's where we try and give the fans a little bit of everything. But the fans also have to realize that sometimes you can't put together a product like that instantly. Like, sometimes you need time to think about what just happened, and you need to hear what Otzelberger had to say about this play that was drawn up with 30 seconds left, or you need to hear Taman Lipsey talk about the moment the game changed. And that's also equally as important as the instant gratification from an instant podcast.
You've seen both sides. You've seen the local news side. Now you've seen the digital side. What would you tell someone who's trying to do both, or if they're going from local news and want to do more YouTube stuff, digital stuff, what would you tell them about your experiences so far?
Well, I'd tell them, if you're going into the digital space, you got to find that niche area. Like, that's how this works. Unless you are Stephen A. Smith, unless you're Pat McAfee, there's not a lot of people that can just flip on YouTube, turn the camera on, and talk about the NFL for an hour straight and have it be sufficient. Because if you're doing this for a living, you got to have people watch, and you got to have advertisers that are going to capitalize on people watching. That's the business side of this. If we rebranded Cyclone Fanatic as Chiefs Fanatic and talked nothing but Chiefs for the next year, I don't know. What connection do I have to Kansas City? What insider information do I have for Kansas City? What connection do I have with the fan base? We'd go under. We'd lose viewers. We wouldn't have Fairway lining up to come sponsor what we're doing with Chiefs Fanatic. And that's what's really important, is to find that niche. And that's always my advice when I'm talking to college students, is if you are a student at Iowa State, what part of Iowa State is being underserved? I know exactly what it is. It's volleyball. Like, I watched that Nebraska game yesterday. That was insane. I don't know a ton about volleyball. I'm not a big volleyball fan. I was interested, but my business, my journalistic sense tells me that volleyball is going to be a lot bigger in 10 years than it is right now. And right now, I mean, I put out a post. I'll be honest. I came up short. I put out a post of Iowa State sweeping Iowa in the Big Four sports of the Cyhawk series. And I truthfully still consider football, wrestling, and then both basketball as the Big Four. And I probably had 20 replies saying, what about volleyball? What about volleyball? And to me, that shows that it's coming in one way or another. How do you capitalize on that? If you're a student, be the volleyball insider. Do a weekly volleyball podcast. Interview the players. Interview the assistant coaches. The people that feel like they don't get the coverage they deserve. And that's how you build it. You might not get 10,000 weekly viewers, but you might get 200 weekly viewers that are diehard, and they're doing it each and every week. And that, my friends, is way more important. It's way more important to have 200 viewers that are diehard than 1,000 viewers that are just, I'll watch this because there's nothing else to do. And that's how you grow a brand in the process. And that is just one example. Mm-hmm. It could be a D2 conference. Like, go all in on, I'm blanking on whatever D2 conferences are called, but go in on the conference that Northwest Missouri State's in and be the guy who's going to talk about every football team in that conference and every men's basketball team in that conference. You might not, again, you're probably not going to be nationally known, but you're going to have a lot of diehard viewers of fans of those teams in that conference, and that is how you build a brand, because that's what Cyclone Fanatic is. People around the country don't really care about the Cyclones that much. Things are different right now, of course. Got a top 5 basketball team, perennially a top 25 football team. It happens. But 20 years ago, when it was the Greg McDermott and the end of the Dan McCarney era, nobody really cared nationally about Iowa State. But people within that fan base did, and that's how Cyclone Fanatic was able to grow, and that'd be my advice.
Yeah, these volleyball games, anyone, even if it's a straight sets win, they're usually competitive. Even like the Iowa State volleyball tournament, those games are always close no matter what. It's fun to watch. And yeah, you mentioned like a niche, like I covered golf in college.
Yeah.
And now a lot of those golfers are on either like the European tour or the PGA tour. So it's cool to just, get those connections and have those small niches that people know and they remember you too. It's cool.
Yeah, it's better to be known as that guy. And like my boss always talks to me about the racing part of it. And that's kind of where the Daily Clone sparked. One of his favorite racing podcasts is a daily 8-minute show, just what you need to know about the dirt racing world that day. There's not a ton of dirt track fans around the world, but the ones that are dirt track racing fans are diehard, and they're going to support your advertising. Like, that's how Cyclone Fanatic runs. We have people that support the advertisers that support us, because we're all Iowans at the end of the day, and everyone wants to support each other. And that's what's really cool about doing what we do, and that's what's important about finding a niche. Because, like, yeah, if you listen to Pardon My Take, you're probably going to be more enticed to purchase a Coors Light opposed to a Bud Light if you're listening to Pardon My Take when you're listening. But for the most part, you're not going to go out of your way to buy a Chevy just because Pardon My Take's sponsored by Chevy. Like, it's easier to advertise when it's personal, and it's easier to advertise when it's local. And that's kind of how Cyclone Fanatic has been built and been sufficient for over 20 years now.
Somebody will always care. That's the key part. And you also do provide a unique perspective as well from your end, because you were a college athlete. So having played college sports, how does that work into watching sports now and covering sports for a living?
Well, I tend to relate probably more with the walk-ons more than anything.
It still counts though. It still counts.
I have very little perspective that can be carried into covering big-time college football or big-time college basketball. But in a very, very, very small way, I can relate to what it's like to be on the end of the bench at an Iowa State basketball. And Conrad Hawley came on one of our Cyclone Fanatic podcasts a couple weeks ago, former walk-on who actually was a Kansas football player, hadn't played basketball in 3 years, and wanted to walk on at Iowa State. And Otzelberger gave him a shot over 500 applicants that wanted to walk on. And his job was never to develop a three-point shot or to get better with his left hand or whatever. Like, he said the staff did not care about his basketball development whatsoever. The staff cared about how he pushed other people and how he was an example to other people. And if he could be on their patented 6 a.m. soccer field workouts in August, beating somebody or pushing somebody, that was a win. And I can kind of relate to that as a D3 tennis player who I played tennis for 2 years in high school. Like, I picked up a racket for the first time when I was 16. I had no intentions ever of playing college tennis. I didn't even choose to go to Simpson because of tennis. I chose to go to Simpson because of a completely different reason. And there was a guy on the team who knew a girl that went to my high school that said, "Hey, we need bodies for practice." And I'm like, you know what? Screw it. At the very worst, it's a decent way to make a couple friends. Like, that was the only thing that I thought of. And I ended up getting addicted to the process, if you will. And I ended up getting addicted to getting better in practice and pushing my teammates. And that's what my job was for 2 years. I was the guy where if I beat someone in a drill or I beat someone on a killer, my coach is like, okay, if Brend can do it, you can do it. And I enjoyed doing that because I'm a competitor, and that would piss me off. And be like, all right, I'm going to do it again and do it again and do it again. And eventually I was good enough to play varsity by the end of my time there, which is kind of a cool accomplishment to have later on in life. But that's where I can kind of relate to what those roles are, whether you're the 14th guy on the bench for Iowa State basketball or you're the 5th string scout linebacker at football. I can relate to what it's like to be the guy that has to push the starters, that has to push the stars, while maybe not getting a ton of those moments to shine publicly, which was certainly the case at D3 tennis. Not a lot of public shine.
Doubles or singles?
Played both. I'm a far better singles player than doubles. I guess right now I'm probably a horrible doubles player. I'm just a bad player right now. I don't play much anymore. I like singles because I didn't like having to rely on anybody else, and I didn't want anyone relying on me. I liked singles because I knew I could go out there and I could just say, whatever happens is on me. Like, this guy can come and beat me, but if he beats me, it's my fault because I wasn't good enough. And sometimes the way tennis works, sometimes you're just going to get matched up with the guy who's better than you, hits harder than you, and is more consistent than you. And sometimes you're going to get 6-0, 6-0'd. And I fully accepted that as the case a few times, but I also took pride sometimes in, okay, this guy he's probably 70% better than me, but I'm going to make him work hard for this. And I'm not going to give him anything. And he can be up 6-2, 4-2, and I'm not going to let him get those last 2 games easy. I'm going to make him fight for that, and I'm going to make him have to think about it. And that's what I took pride in. And I also took pride in most of the time, if I played in a toss-up match, I won because I tried to not let myself get beat. And that's, when I look back on it, that's what I'm proud of more than anything. I never really pulled a massive upset or anything like that. It's hard to do in tennis, but there are very few times where I let a guy that was slightly better than me beat me, because there are a lot of soft guys in D3 college tennis. There are a lot of I'm proud to not be a tennis kid. I didn't grow up in tennis academies or anything like that. I beat a couple kids from tennis academies that were total head cases, total nut jobs. And I'm like, I'm not going to let that happen, and I'm going to prove that I'm tougher than you, and I'm just going to go out and beat you. And that's pretty much the only thing I miss about it looking back, other than the free 3,000 calories a day that I would be able to burn during practice.
Who's a pro tennis player you're watching?
I'll be honest, dude. I didn't really watch tennis ever growing up. I've gotten into it more. I love Carlos Alcaraz. I think he's so fun to watch. Same thing with Sinner. But I don't watch a ton. I watch Wimbledon when it rolls around. I try to watch a lot of the Grand Slams for the most part. But yeah, I don't know how you can't watch Alcaraz and fall in love with the guy. But him and Sinner both so fun to watch. Yeah,
the way they play, just play fast, hit the ball hard, running from side to side, super quick, fun to watch for sure. Where can people see your work on Cyclone Fanatic and your personal accounts as well?
Yeah, Cyclone Fanatic on YouTube is just the easiest way. Cyclone Fanatic, that's it. On YouTube, you'll find 99% of the content that I do. If you're more of a podcast person, we've also got those Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. But I'd recommend, if you're a Cyclone fan and you're not subscribed to the Cyclone Fanatic YouTube channel, you're completely missing out. Pretty much every game, every home game, I've got a 5-minute report. We've got a 15-minute instant reaction podcast. I've got the full pressers. I've got highlights from the game. Like, I pretty much everything on that YouTube channel, and that's where I'd implore you to go. We've also always have great written content at cyclonefanatic.com, and we don't want to forget about that either.
Make sure you subscribe to Cyclone Fanatic, like Jake said, and make sure you hit that subscribe button here for Cousins Conversations as well, keeping this podcast and this YouTube channel going. Jake, I appreciate you joining me on Cousins Conversations.
Thanks a lot, Nick. Thanks for having me.
All right. Peace out, everybody.
Bye.